Hey folks, welcome back. Just wanted to have kind of a free flow. I'm having trouble today thinking of what to make a video about. I mean there's so much going on, so much to catch up on all the time, and gosh, just so many problems. To me, I mean I definitely want to get to solutions on my channel as quickly as possible, but I kind of feel like we still have so many people that just aren't of the various things happening, whether it be culturally or economic, government, whatever. And so I don't know. I kind of feel like before any positive change can really occur, we are gonna have to catch up on the things. I keep debating, with this channel being super new. And not having dove into a lot of the topic areas or a lot of the background and setup for why I want to talk about certain subjects and why not others, and what I think the biggest problems are in terms of for the vast majority of us. So I'm debating on whether I should do that, is really start doing deep dive videos and background on different things, or if I should be just kind of topical or as of now stories that just build upon our knowledge and understanding of what's happening in the world currently. So do I use whatever voice I might have, whatever brain cells I can rub together to try and ease more people into discussions such as, corruption, which is it's pretty easy. Most people have major distrust in our government, whatever party it is, and the media as well, of course. I mean, they've been caught in so many lies at this point, or just lies of omission, or just covering certain things and building out the narrative. That's all they're there to do. There's an establishment narrative that must be upheld. Anything outside of that has to be shut down or dismissed, or called conspiracy theory. So the distrust is there in terms of the government, the media, and of course the economy too. I mean, we all understand about Wall Street, big banks, hedge funds, the governments, or the politicians that enable them to manipulate our markets and just make tons and tons of money, and then always getting bailed out when they fail, borrowing money basically for nothing. They don't have to make substantial interest payments, and if they get that free money and whatever their business venture happens to be, if that fails, they just claim bankruptcy, and whoops, taxpayer dollars, bailouts, we could lose it and waste it and whatever, nothing's gonna happen. But we also need to really be talking about the woke brigade, social justice warriors, the ideology, anti-racism, critical theory, all of that. And look, I'm not some wacko conservative that where sometimes they overblow the problem, or they are attacking some of the weirder things about it. Because most of us reasonable people, we understand what it means to be tolerant or accepting or even celebrating of people being who they want to be and doing what they want to do within the law, right? And how, yes, there's some things that should change legally because of its impact disproportionately on whatever community it might have that impact on. And that this goes into the racial discussion that has been happening for many years now, for a long time, but especially recently, since George Floyd and COVID and the things that have happened since then. It's an absolute overdrive now. The weird and the problem is most people gravitate towards the folks that are really heavy into this ideology. The average person, and a lot of times, will lean towards being supportive of that because, it sounds great on the surface, right? Because you want to protect vulnerable communities. You want to help them to make something of themselves, be successful in life, right? Generate wealth for themselves and their families, just being successful. And also with, LGBTQ, live and let live, do whatever, be you. I grew up in the 90s primarily and was majorly into punk rock scene and like anarchy all the way, and you know just totally anti-government, anti-cop, basically a hippie stoner person. And I remember what it was like then in the 90s trying to navigate you know navigate society and to develop your moral foundations as someone growing up in that time. And a lot of the pushback in society or culture at large was coming from mostly the right, conservatism and the religious, mostly evangelical religious, thinking about the Reagan and the George Bush and just that. There was a certain type of person, and when I hear people talking about white supremacy and the whole system's white supremacists and all of that stuff, I know what who they're trying to pinpoint. It's these older white men in suits that try to tell people how to live, and how to be moral, but will be some of the most immoral, corrupt people out there. And these types of people have ruined our system. I mean, they've just been stealing from all of us. But it's branched out now. It's not just those white men in suits. It's those white, black, Hispanic, people in suits manipulating, in the centers of power. It's still largely white only because of age and the culture that generation came from, and yes, was more white dominant. White skin in America, once it became America, has largely been white. That's how it's going to be. It's called majority, not oppressors, because they're the majority. But it's all races, genders, and sexualities now that are in the establishment, crushing the rest of us. Man, I would argue, but I'm biased, that it's almost entirely economic oppression, just theft and corruption. I mean, that's where the biggest problems have come, because poverty disproportionately affecting black and brown communities, it's true. And it's from just generational issues of lack of wealth and opportunity in those communities. They're still going to be largely held down or kept back or oppressed by even the past structures in our society. And I think it's more that these groups are experiencing basically reverberations from the past, that still may have an impact on them. But I don't agree that the systems as they are now and just culture more broadly is white supremacist. I totally reject that. Looking at popular culture, especially music and sports and art, all of that stuff is dominated by black people. Let's be honest, because they make good shit, and so they dominate. And these ideas, being pro or at least accepting of LGBTQ people, that's all through Hollywood and the media and all of that. It's been adopted by the wider culture. Supreme Court approved gay marriage. Yeah, it took way longer than it should, but it happened. That's huge. So no, we're not living under the same type of oppression that we were before, based on race or gender or sex or religion or all of that stuff that we saw for those of us growing up in the 90s. That was what we were fighting against. And it's hard for, I think, some of us and millennial Gen Xers to the types of things that kids are learning and that our kids are learning in their schools, and how frightened we are about to accept that there's a new sheriff in town, basically, that yes, these fundamentalist religious conservatives do still have some power in our society and in our government, but oh man, it's largely democratic establishment now. I mean, just think about where the Republican Party was a couple decades ago, and where they are now. I mean, now they do not fight on the gay marriage thing. They are accepting more of the decriminalization of drugs kind of ideas, and they're also talking about, corporate monopolies and corruption too, even though they do it, right? Talking about big tech and the power that they have, and that they're basically monopolies effectively and need to be broken up. These kind of things would have never come out of a conservative's mouth, as far as most of us understood growing up and being in the generations that we are. But we see something new today, and what that thing is a takeover of culture by some of the most, at least superficially, far left ideals. And we're talking about that, the wokeness, and social justice stuff, because again, most people don't know. I mean, this stuff ranges back so far into history, the sources of these ideas within critical theory and anti-racism, in practice. And that's where the biggest problem lies, because if you notice, so looking back to 2016, and we had this real big outsider popularity move with the election, with Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. I was a Bernie Sanders supporter, and no longer can be, because he's totally rolled over, on all of his policies, basically, in order to support Joe Biden. And Biden's terrible. We see that already. And then there was, so, when Bernie was talking about just, the millionaires, billionaires, or just, taxing the rich, or just offering more programs to people, what I liked about him is he was addressing the actual economic problems on the ground that affect all of us if we're not in that, top, 5-10% of people. In my mind, they're not even the problem either. I want people to be rich. I want to have rich people. I think that most of us will want to strive to be that. And it makes us create more. It makes us do good things. But what I don't want is the disgustingly rich. The ones that do have the power to move or shape policy, write it, to impact just large swaths of the population while being so disconnected from the average people. And that's what I liked about Bernie. And even Trump spoke to that somewhat. I wasn't a Trump supporter. I'm still really not, but I'm not like super silly, like terrified of the guy. Like a lot of, either far left or establishment Democrats pretend to be. He at least spoke to working class, whether he did much for them or not. He spoke to them, because there are a lot of disaffected white men in particular. Think about it. Our culture right now, everywhere, even in schools, teaching children is about, the social justice, the woke stuff. And because it's about pointing out or judging people based on race. All these white men are, if they're younger, they're being told that they have some kind of privilege that other people don't. And if they don't succeed, it's their fault. Anyone else, though, of other races, if they don't succeed, no, it's the white person's fault. So it's their fault, no matter what. If they didn't succeed, or if you didn't succeed, it's his fault. And it's really confusing a lot of people, flying right in the face of MLK's dream, of not judging by the color of their skin or any other characteristics that we can't change about ourselves, I think. Well, they call them immutable characteristics, right? One of the bigger problems too, though, is this ideology and how fast it's taking over everything. I was speaking to my brother yesterday, and we both he's got 4 kids, I have 3, and we were talking about what they're going to learn in these curriculums developed with at least critical theory in mind. It's not direct critical theory where they're teaching them what is that and where to come from. No, it's applied critical theory, and it's really just it's having a lot of these discussions about just white privilege and people of color, all of them being oppressed, telling kids of color, which I hate this, that they won't be successful because they're oppressed by the system, which that's just false. We've seen so many people and so many of my friends that have gone on to do great things. It doesn't matter what their race is as much anymore. You'll find some instances, some maybe businesses or employers do that. If they get caught, they're going to be reprimanded. Especially in this current climate. I mean, people are losing jobs over way less than that. Even just barely going against this new ideology coming out of the diversity, equity, inclusion. The diversity, inclusion, and equity departments and managers, administrators that are now part of all of these corporations and institutions. I heard someone say, it's almost like how in China, the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, they have somebody from the party in every organization, and they have a certain wing for the CCP in every organization. And that's happening with these diversity officers in every company, basically. What should scare you is the widespread adoption from these huge multinational corporations of the ideology, at least in their signaling and branding. If they're backing it up, there's a problem. It's all, in my mind, it's all a distraction. There are very real and honest conversations we can have about racism and all of that, but this isn't it. It's just casting too wide a net. It's too bigoted itself. The ideology really is racist, because reducing everybody to their race, when you look through that framework or that lens, or apply that way of thinking. So anyways, to me, I want to bring more average folks into these bigger conversations that I've been following for several years now. And again, it's from people across, ages and across political spectrum. Personally on the left, with some right-leaning or leaning ideas in certain areas. It depends on the question, right? So what I will share is a lot of different voices from the sides, mixed in with experts, depending on what we're talking about. And then yeah, we'll kind of, I'm hoping with my channel, what I can do is establish the framework of understanding around these problems, and then from there go into more of a solutions oriented channel. We'll see how that goes. I'm not going to be able to help it if I have a wild hair on my ass and I want to say something about something current or talk about solutions to a given problem. But again, just getting started, trying to figure out where this goes, what I can make of it. So anybody who watches this, thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. If you do want to support this, communicating to create some kind of community around these problems, then yeah, support the channel or just subscribe, watch, and I'll be very happy to have you. So with that being said, like, share, subscribe, all that junk, and I'll see you later.